Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to Saturday Hodgepodge. This is my weekly wrap-up of booktubey things and things I've been doing and things that I've been thinking. This week, if you noticed on my community tab, I posted a survey. And I was really pleased. 85 people responded to the survey, which is about 81 people more than I thought would respond. So that was a good thing, and I thank all of you for participating. And the questions on that survey were basically designed to decide what type of reader you were. Now, since it's a survey, it didn't have limitless options. So the questions were essentially you had to choose which one of these types of readers you were. Do you sub-vocalize and think characters are more important than plot? Do you not sub-vocalize, think characters are more important than plot? Do you sub-vocalize and think plot's more important than character? Do you not sub-vocalize and think plot's more important than character? Those are the four categories, and even though I know that it didn't fit everybody perfectly, that's the categories that I put on the survey. And a lot of people asked me, and were curious as to know what I was going to do with it. Well, this is what I was doing with it. So my motivation for doing that for doing that survey, had to do with the mid-year freak-out book tag that lots of people here have done, and I've watched lots of people's versions of that tag, and I did a version of that tag. And there's a question in that tag that asks you who your latest fictional crush is. And one of the things I noticed about that question and about that question on the tag was that a lot of people just said, I don't get fictional crushes. That's not how it works for me. And, that is how it works for me. And so I was curious, why is it that some people develop these kind of fictional crushes and some people don't? So I came up with kind of a hypothesis that had to do with this sub-vocalizing thing. So my hypothesis was that maybe people who sub-vocalize are more likely to think of character as more important than plot, because somehow when they sub-vocalize, they're internalizing what they're reading, and they are more likely to make an emotional connection to the characters. And people who don't sub-vocalize then are less likely to think that character is the most important part of a book, and they're less likely to make this emotional connection. And that was my theory, such as it is. So I put the survey out there, and I was wondering, if anybody's going to do it, and lots of people did. And again, let me just say thank you. And so here are the results. I'll put the results. Let me get Zelda out from under the table. I'll put the results right up over here. So essentially, what it came down to is that most people who took the survey sub-vocalize. Okay, the vast majority of the people who took the survey are sub-vocalizers. 61% of the 85 people who took it as of Friday night sub-vocalize. Okay, so most people sub-vocalize, and it's the minority who don't. And most people think character is more important than plot. A lot more people said character was more important than plot. So the real thing then was, is there a correlation between sub-vocalizing and thinking character is more important than plot? Do sub-vocalizers, are they more likely to say character is more important than plot than non-sub-vocalizers? So there were 61 sub-vocalizers who voted. Okay, of the 61 sub-vocalizers who voted, 50 said character was more important than plot. So 50 of the 61 sub-vocalizers said character was more important than plot, and when I do the math, that comes out to about 82% of the sub-vocalizers said character was more important than plot. 24 people said they didn't sub-vocalize in the survey, and of the 24 people who said they didn't sub-vocalize, 17 said that character was more important than plot. So when I divided 17 by 24, that came out to about 71% of non-sub-vocalizers felt that character was more important than plot. So is there a correlation? Well, sub-vocalizers do appear to be, from the result of my survey, do appear to think character is more important than plot. Does that necessarily mean that sub-vocalizers are more likely to make an emotional connection to character? I don't know. Does that mean is that a big enough difference to make a big deal out of? No. Was the survey fun, and do I appreciate you voting? Yes. So I'm not sure I learned anything, but it was kind of fun to do it, and maybe hopefully to prove that I could do math. So there was that. I wanted to make sure I got that out of the way. Now it feels like a whole lot of build-up for not a whole lot of result, but there it is. And like I said, the results of the survey are probably still up over here if I remember to extend that slide long enough. Today in the United States of America is also the 4th of July. This is the 4th of July where, fortunately, there won't be any celebration in my town. If you followed the progress of COVID-19 around the world, you know that the United States has had the worst response of any nation in the world. That we are a nation with 4% of the population and more than 25% of all the cases. That a significant portion of the deaths from COVID-19 at the time of this filming, around 132,000 Americans have died from COVID-19, which is far more than any other nation. That while other nations, almost exclusively those nations who have had to deal with COVID-19 as long as we have seemed to have gotten things for the most part under control, or at least more under control by the standards compared to the United States. Meanwhile, we are essentially have lost control again, and I have no idea how we're going to regain control. We have a president who is openly racist, who retweeted a supporter yelling white power, whose minions are out there pushing this racist notion that COVID-19 was intentionally created by the Chinese, who then introduced it to the rest of the world to bring the rest of the world down. That's not somebody or something I'm particularly proud of. This is the first time in my life that I can honestly say that the United States appears to be a laughingstock to the rest of the world. And on top of that, we have a president who is more concerned with preserving statues of Confederate war generals than he is with making real changes to the way in which police interact with African Americans in the United States. We have seen Black Lives Matter parades and protests go on, and they continue to go on, and no real reforms have been made at the national level, even though some cities have begun the process of at least looking at policing differently and begin to put in place reforms. This idea that it's the 4th of July and I can't necessarily celebrate the country that I love is deeply disturbing to me. And it called to mind a speech given by Frederick Douglas in 1852 around the celebration of July the 4th. The speech today is usually referred to as What is July the 4th to a Slave? And it's a long speech. I'll leave a link to the speech in the show box down below so you can read the whole thing if you want to. But I just picked out a quote from the speech that I'm going to read to you, which I think is pretty appropriate to the situation we find ourselves in today. Even though Douglas is speaking specifically about the hypocrisy of a nation celebrating freedom and independence and equality when it enslaves millions of people, I still think the quote could apply to us here in the United States today. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and I could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not the light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. So there's my 4th of July message. Who could say it better than Frederick Douglass? So on to basic reading stuff. You know, the end of this month in July kind of caught me in the middle of transitioning from June reading to July reading. I don't know how you schedule your reading or how this works out for you when you're doing your reading, but for me, the end of the month is where I always schedule things based on the month. So I think if you watched my wrap-up TBR video, you probably know a lot of the stuff already, but I'll just repeat it really quickly. I finished Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, which is a buddy read I did with Lukash, and that was really fun, and I liked the book quite a bit. I also finished The Yellow House by Sarah M. Broom. This is one of the books I was reading for the BookTube prize. Then this week I started on my July reading, and I am reading for the BookTube prize Underland by Robert McFarlane, so I can't tell you much about that. I saw today that Jason over at Byways in Bookland has made his official Foucault's Pendulum announcement, and he has, I'll leave a link to his video down below, and he's promised to kind of walk us through this novel, and so I am going to attempt it. This will be at least my third attempt, if not my fourth, and as Jason pointed out at the beginning of his video, many people, like me, say that they get around 50 pages and they just give up. That's been me every other time. And then tomorrow I'll actually begin reading Going After Cacciato by Tim O'Brien, and this is a buddy read that I'm doing with Mark Nash, and really looking forward to that as well. So also, when I was doing my TBR for this month, I forgot to mention that as a part of the Toni Morrison 2020 read-along, this month's novel is Jazz. That's the 6th Toni Morrison novel, and we're reading that this month. I'm looking forward to that. I've read that one before and I liked it, so I'm looking forward to rereading it. And then also, if you follow my channel, I've been doing a short story project where I essentially read and kind of talk about one American, kind of classic American short story each month. This month's short story is The Worn Path by Eudora Welty, and if I can find a PDF to that file for that, I'll leave it down below so you can read it, and that video should go up on July the 25th. So I also want to make some shout outs, and unfortunately I didn't remember to look up the names of these people, but I do have their channel names, and I've been watching their videos here lately, two of which I found, well, all of them really, which I found by doing recent searches for the BookTube newbie tag. Let me encourage you, when you're viewing BookTube, when you're on YouTube, to just do a search for the BookTube newbie tag, and I usually limit my search to a month. And I just go through and I kind of look. Sometimes I just look at I'll be honest, I look at the thumbnail and I go, okay, you know, this doesn't look like, try to look at the books on the shelves in the background, and if it looks like it's a lot of YA fantasy, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's not something I read, I maybe go on. I have a tendency to look for booktubers who are probably closer to my age, but not always. And so if you've never done that, let me encourage you to do that. It's a great way to find new channels, and so that we can kind of promote and share those channels. I have three. One is a channel called Shelfware, and the guy, like I told you, I forgot to look up names. The guy who runs, whose channel is Shelfware, also has a podcast. I've been watching his videos. He reads a lot of sci-fi, and I think he introduced me to the term hard sci-fi, I think, which is science fiction, which has a real firm grounding in science. A channel I just found yesterday whose name is confusing, but I think the name of the channel is Hey It's Her Shay. I'll leave a link to that down below as well. I think she has like 4 videos up. I think I watched 3 of them yesterday. She's funny, she's sarcastic. I like her taste in books. I like her approach to BookTube. She doesn't take this or herself too seriously. And the last channel I want to mention is The Beer and the Bookcase, another booktuber who has a beer along with their videos, which, you know, I enjoy. I enjoy different kinds of beer myself, and in watching a couple of his videos, it looks like his book taste and my book taste come close to aligning, and so I followed his channel. I encourage you all to go over and check out those channels, and I'll leave links to those all in the description box down below. Anyway, there you go. That's my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. As always, I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and thank you for watching.